Hi, I'm Alan Hedblum. Welcome to our show, a place to feel like you belong. We welcome to the studio today Reouhidi Ndjerareou. Reouhidi is a native of Ndjamena, Chad, and a third culture kid with big visions. When he's not busy granting television interviews, he's a student at Grand Rapids Theological Seminary and a natural helper for LINC Revitalization. Reouhidi, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
I appreciate it.
So now you are clearly a multilingual, multicultural person, and that's really represented in your name. Tell us about your name, first of all, and what that means.
Well, you did a pretty good job of the pronunciation. It's Reouhidi, so Reouhidi Ndjerareou. So in my native language, we do say the N and the D together. But since being here in America, we have dropped the N and the D and say Ndjerareou.
Okay.
But tradition Ndjerareou. And so Reouhidi simply means one who builds a road. And the name was given to you by? The name was given to me by my grandfather.
Okay.
So Reouhidi actually means the road keeps growing, because I'm the firstborn of my father. And so that means I keep the family going. And the last name Ndjerareou means one who builds a road, because we're a bunch of road builders in different directions and have different visions.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And your middle name is a biblical name.
Yeah, it's Reuben.
Okay.
Behold a son. So one of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And which actually then underscores your family's Christian heritage.
Yes, yes.
Okay, because you're the third seminarian in a line of.
Yeah, correct. My grandfather's a pastor. Didn't go to seminary. He did more Bible education
Okay.
in the local village. My father went to seminary. He went to Trinity Divinity in Chicago, Illinois, and then did his PhD work in Dallas, Texas, in Old Testament Theology. So I'm the grandson of a pastor and son of a pastor. And I'm attending seminary, but I'm not looking to be behind the pulpit. My vision is more organizational type of leadership and ministry within the church.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But now, is it your father or your grandfather who's been called the Billy Graham of Chad?
I'd say more my father, but my grandfather also has a great presence, especially within the village community.
Okay.
My father really within the city, in Ndjamena and throughout the country, and they both have a very well-known reputation within the church in Chad. Yeah.
So now the course of your life has been fairly itinerant. You move a lot, and you've been back and forth and back and
Correct.
forth. So you've had the Atlantic Ocean under you a
Correct,
lot.
yeah.
Talk about your life history and continent switching.
Well, I'll try to keep it brief because it is a long history, and I
Sure.
know we have a limited amount of time. But born in Chad in 1977, we fled in 1979 because of a civil war. We flew to the southern part of Chad, to the town of Mundu. We were there for a little bit, then we ended up in West Africa, first in the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, and then eventually in Burkina Faso for a couple years. Then from there, my father came to the States in 1981 to Trinity, Divinity in Chicago, where he was there for a year learning English, because Chad is a French-speaking country,
Right.
And he didn't speak English at the time, so he had to learn English. And then in 1982, it was me, my brother, and my younger sister, and my mom. We joined him in Chicago. So we were there for about 2 years while he finished up his master's degree, then eventually moved to Dallas, Texas, where he began his PhD work. He didn't complete it, but decided to return back to Chad. So we actually moved back, and he began to head up the churches in Chad for several years. And then from there, he kept coming back to the States. For once a year to keep working on his dissertation. I was there for a little bit, then I moved back to Dallas to stay with a family friend of my father's while they were still in Chad. So I did high school in Texas, and once I graduated from high school in 1996, I moved to Seattle, Washington, where my brother actually was there going to high school. So there we attended school together for about a year, and then we transferred to the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire,
where you fell in love.
Yeah, where I met my lovely wife, Michelle. At the time when we met, we were just friends throughout the 2 years I was there.
That's how it usually starts.
Yeah, that's how it starts. I was there for 2 years. I graduated. I was ahead of her by 1 year. I graduated, and I moved to Iowa, and then back to Texas, and eventually I moved back to Chad. And so, you know, the distance and just a lot of things happened, and you know, we tried to keep in touch on and off. And actually, she did come to Africa. She actually spent a year in the Central African Republic,
wow,
working for my father, who was heading up a seminary at the time. And at that time, we did try to connect, but I think there was just so much distance between us. And
Africa is a big continent.
Africa is a big continent, exactly. And I think also, as you just mentioned, the issue of identity and, you know, having grown up in the States, really, I was struggling with my identity.
Sure.
And so that created friction between us. And she moved back to the States, and again, we kept in touch, and we didn't keep in touch. And then when I returned back to the States in 2010, we reconnected, and then everything went from there, and we got married last year.
Okay, well, congratulations. Awesome.
Thank you.
Clearly meant to be.
Yeah, I couldn't get away, but I'm happy about that.
Awesome,
so, yeah.
awesome. So I want to go back to this issue of identity, because as we were talking earlier, you know, you spent some formative years in the U.S., but then you're back in Chad. When you're in Chad or other countries in Africa, Africans look at you and you say, "Dude, you're American." But when you're here, you say, "No, I feel African." So how does that work?
Well, that's a really good question, because I've struggled with that for a long time. I think I'm getting to the point in my life with maturity how better to handle it. But correct, once I grew up here, I was in the States from the age of 4 to 12, and then from 12 to 16 I was in Chad, and then 16 to 22 I was here in America again. So this back and forth has really early on created an identity crisis, because I'm American. I grew up in America, so I really carried a lot of American culture in me, and then moved back to Chad and created a lot of friction, because I couldn't understand what was going on, and I didn't understand the culture and the customs, and did many things that were perceived as, in my mind, were okay, but in that culture was very rude. And so then I moved back to the States again, and the reverse thing happened. Eventually I became very Africanized, and then coming back to the States, even though I'd grown up here, was also identity crisis, because like you said, I felt very Chadian now. I felt a kinship to my people, and the time I spent, I went to the villages. My dad made it his priority to introduce me to my uncles and to his friends, and it really gave me a sense of belonging. And so I have that struggle that goes in, that happens from time to time.
So what makes you really proud of being Chadian? What just works, and just say, I so identify with these particular values? Because clearly every culture has its pluses and minuses.
I think for me, the culture, the identity of the lineage from where I come from.
Okay.
Because I can point out who my grandfather is, my great-grandfather. I can see that my dad has pointed it out to us. And living in a communal culture, like Africa, we're always together. We're always sharing stories, talking about our ancestors, and talking about what it means to be a Chadian. And so that, and then seeing the evidence and the testimony of my father, the things he's done. Because he came to the States, he studied, and he returned home because he had a mission. He had said that he was going to come to study in the U.S. and return to Africa, because he had such a desire in his ministry to develop the spiritual aspect of the work in Africa. And so that has definitely motivated me and given me a lot of courage to do that. So
yeah, and in an earlier conversation, you had said that there are people who come from Africa, get comfortable here, and say, you know, not going back. But your dad has this commitment that there's work to be done, and actually, you have as well.
And that was developed over time, because honestly, when I went back home after college, I didn't want to go. I was going to go home for a year and return, and I didn't want to be in Chad. But over the course of the 10 years that I spent there after college, it began to transform me. My thinking began to transform. My vision in life, I guess just with maturity of growing up, just gave me a new vision. And so the love of the country, I fell in love with Africa.
Yeah.
And so coming back to the States now was just to pursue a master's degree with the long-term objective of returning back to Africa to develop indigenous leadership.
Sure. So as I'd said in the introduction, you're working on a degree at the seminary, but at the same time, you're doing some work for LINC, Revitalization, and you have this wonderful title on your business card, Natural Helper.
Yeah.
I've never seen a business card with I've seen interesting things. But.
Yeah, I get a lot of that.
Good.
And when I was told of the position, not for the position as a natural helper, I said, first of all, it's a job. I'm thankful for employment. So I have to give me the title you want, but thank you for the job as well. But I think the term of using natural helper, as I'm learning in the position, is that you have this ability to connect with people, to talk with them, to engage with them. You know, we're mostly on Madison, the corner of Madison and Hall.
Sure.
On the southeast side of town.
And maybe for the viewers,
Yeah.
what does LINC do? First of all, it doesn't stand for anything.
Yeah, LINC doesn't stand for anything, but it is about connecting people. So we try to connect resources with the community. So the community may have a certain need, whether that be in education or seeing their community revitalized in certain ways, but they have to take the leadership role in that. And so LINC just comes beside them and walks with them in trying to meet those objectives. They set the tone, and we come and help find the resources to help them achieve those objectives.
So what have you learned through your working with LINC? How does that help your personal development?
It helps my personal development to see that there are people out there who really want to see their community changed. I think that's the same thing I saw in Africa, that same experience. And maybe two different continents, two different cultures, but the foundation is still the same. Community. Okay. And you want, and how that may be done is maybe very different. The application of it may be very different, but the foundation is still the same. So it teaches me, how do I engage my community? How do I motivate people and encourage them, even in the difficult situations, that this is their community and that we can find a way to help them achieve those goals.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Reouhidi, we have to wrap up in a minute here, but I wanted to ask you, you're doing some very important short-term things right now in Grand Rapids, but you have a longer-term vision for work in Africa and revolves around indigenous leadership. Can you talk about the importance of that?
The importance of indigenous leadership is vital to developing Africa and developing specifically my country of Chad. Again, through the lessons I'm learning with LINC and how to in this community initiatives here in Grand Rapids, I'm gaining those lessons that I hope to use in Africa someday. And Africans need to understand that before the colonial powers came, we were taking care of ourselves in our communities, in our villages, within our families, and somehow we've lost that, and with this idea that we don't have the ability to lead. And we always wait for either the Western answers or Western perspectives to problems that are definitely just how are they viewed in an African sense, requiring African solutions. And so there's human resources. We have a lot of good people on the ground in Africa that just need the training and to be put in the positions of leadership and to be challenged. And I think they will step up to, to the challenge and be able to become the leaders of their respective countries, and especially in Chad.
Once you throw off the yoke of colonialism, it's not like, okay, all of a sudden we're free, because there's still a certain mindset that's lingering and really inhibiting people's empowerment. I think.
And you make a very good point. That mindset, it needs to be transformed. You know, a really deep transformational mind of the mindset to understand that, yes, I'm capable. Yes, this is my home country, and I have the ability to bring the solutions. Yeah, there are a lot of difficulties. I don't want to dismiss that, but there's difficulties anywhere.
Absolutely.
And if we want to truly see our countries develop in Africa, we have to be engaged and we have to be involved. And that requires a holistic approach to it. You can't be involved in one part and not in the other. Yeah. And it is a burden, but it's a good burden with definitely good blessings and good things that can happen.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're up for the challenge.
I'm excited. I'm ready to go when that opportunity is presented.
Well, and I haven't been in Ndjamena for 30 plus years, so I need to make a return visit. So
you're more than welcome.
Yeah,
we'll welcome you back with open arms.
Look forward to reconnecting in that way.
All right, thank you.
Reouhidi, thank you so much for coming by and sharing your story.
Thank you. I appreciate your questions and the time you've offered me.
You bet. You bet. And for our visitors back home, stay tuned. We'll be coming back shortly with some tips on American English, American culture, and American humor. How do you respond when you hear a name that's not familiar? Maybe it's a very long or unusual name. Maybe it's foreign sounding to your ear. In any case, while it may seem strange to you, it's pretty important to the person who carries the name. I know some Americans who feel embarrassed about saying unusual, foreign-sounding names. Sometimes they just smile and nod, but they never make the effort to say the name out loud. Worse yet, they may say, "How about if I just call you Bud?" Well, newsflash. These are not good approaches. Just as your name is important to you, so is each unique name important to its owner. Let me give you some tips. If you don't understand the person's name, just smile and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say it again?" If you don't understand a second time, it's not a big deal. Chances are the person knows he or she has a difficult name. It's happened before. A person will feel respected, however, if you make the effort to say their name. Maybe you can ask them to repeat slowly. You can say, "Sorry, I'm not good at names, but I'd really like to get your name right. Can you help me learn it?" A great example is our guest, Reouhidi Ndjerareou. The average American, me too, actually gets a little freaked out when we see too many vowels or too many consonants all stacked up in a way that looks unfamiliar. Not the English way, basically. One thing that helps me is to make up mnemonics for words that are hard to remember. In our friend's case, I think of rowing a boat across a small pond and then seaweed gets all over your oars. In other words, I think of row and weedy. Now that may not be the perfect way to say his name, but it's close enough to help me remember it and close enough for Reouhidi to feel I respected his name. If you go to our What's Up webpage at feellikeyouBelong.com, we offer more tips for working with unfamiliar names. In the meantime, don't be shy. Learn a new name and make someone's day. The tenant was complaining to his landlord, "Those people upstairs are very annoying. Last night they stomped and banged on the floor until midnight." "I'm sorry," said the landlord. "Did they wake you?" "No," replied the tenant. "Luckily, I was awake and playing my tuba at the time."